Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and we welcome back Mark Stoddard.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
And thanks, Tim, for hopping on as a co-host. Tell us why you wanted Mark Stoddard back so soon.
I want to hear about Mark's career in the military.
Yeah? Anything specifically?
His experiences in peace and war.
Right. Paratrooping.
Awesome. Well, I'm here. Here to share, and I will kind of tag into something that we were just talking about. You shared a story of, I believe it was your grandfather that jumped in?
No, it was my dad's friend.
Your dad's friend that jumped into D-Day.
Yeah.
So on D-Day, there were 2 assaults, went in. A lot of the aircraft missed their objectives, and they lost. Well over 8,000 were killed or so in the next few days. So those guys are the greatest generation. Now, I was very fortunate, and I'm going to jump ahead in my career a little bit to tie this story in. I was very fortunate during my career to have a very, I would call, airborne heavy career. I made more than 150 static line jumps out of 14 different aircraft. I was a jumpmaster that graduated from the jumpmaster school taught by the 19th Special Forces Group in Utah. And we actually, during the graded portion, and I didn't realize how unusual it was at the time, we had exposed weapons. And the reason that's a little different is because the way the Army jumps now and has jumped for years, and only Special Forces units have done this in the past, is they have a case that you put your weapon in. And then when you hit the ground, you take it out of the case. But jumping ahead, the aircraft that they jumped out was called a C-47 Sky Crane or a DC-3. Now, I jumped out with my highest static line jump, actually is out of one of those with the 19th Special Forces Group in Utah. I jumped out at 9,000 feet, not 9,000, 3,000 feet, which normal jump altitude on most jumps, just routine training jumps, is 1,250 feet. That's the normal AGL, which is pretty cool.
Later, to let people know, when people are skydiving for fun, they'll be higher so that they can have more.
Yeah. So I'll segue for a second. I have about 30 skydives as well. I'm still chasing my what's called the Class A license. I think I'll get it someday. But yeah, with that, you're jumping out at about 12,000 feet. The highest I've jumped skydiving is 15,000 feet. You get more hang time with that, obviously. But so to tie into your dad's friend's World War II story, those aircraft, later I got this really kind of the #1 airborne job in the Army, really. I was the operations officer as a captain for what is called the Airborne and Special Operations Test Directorate. It's part of the Army's test command, and they are responsible for conducting all of the Army's developmental and operational testing of airdrop systems of personnel and equipment. So if it falls out of an airplane, it's nicknamed the test board. They're called the Airborne Test Board. That's kind of their short nickname. And so before it can be officially done, they do the testing to make sure it's safe. And the developmental part, they have to have so many successful data points. And then in the operational part, they'll bring in guys from the 82nd and elsewhere to get the numbers up. And then they'll get their operational data points. And then once they got all the data points and the math adds up and they've got no issues, and they'll send it off to the quartermaster school, and they'll write the manual on either how to put that piece of gear on a pallet, or that piece of parachute gear gets approved, etc. Well, as the operational officer, I was responsible for running all the operational meetings, making sure all the test schedule went as appropriately. And we would often do what are called proficiency jumps that you're just going to go out and maintain your proficiency. We were known on post as kind of the cool place that you could go do that, right? So we'd often get, when you do that, when you go to another unit, the nickname in the Army for that, you're called a strap hanger. So you're going down to a unit that's doing a jump, and you're just kind of strap hanging along. You're going to make a jump and keep your record up. So a lot of times you have to jump every 3 months. So once you reach 6 months without a jump, you're what's called a pay hurt, because you're about to lose your money. And so we would get a lot of those guys that, hey man, I don't want to lose my money. I need to go and make a jump. Well, I scheduled, and it was owned by the U.S. Forestry Service, actually, a DC-3 several times. And the first time we did it, I scheduled
for firefighting, right?
Yes. Yeah. So smoke jumpers would jump out of this and they would use it for other things. And so we would rent it from them. So I was responsible for paying them, scheduling it, getting it there, and all that kind of thing. Right. We had a lot of old timers at this unit, a lot of Army retirees that had been around a long time. Now, this gentleman, he's now since passed, unfortunately, but he's a legend in this community. And his name is Pete Morricon, absolute legend. And when that unit did put me through accelerated free fall training, he was on a couple of those jumps with me, and I did test jumps with him because he was a test officer. Well, when I rented this DC-3, I knew that he had very likely, he was that old, when he went through jump school, this was the aircraft he jumped out of initially, because he went through in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
So the first time we rented it, I went to him and I said, hey, Pete, we're going to do this thing. And I would love for you to, when we get to the drop zone, because the aircraft actually landed on the drop zone, and we take off Sicily drop zone in Fort Bragg, really, really big, got a runway. And so it came in and landed, and you've got these little mock-ups where you hold your static line and you have to do this mock training before you go out. So everything's fresh on your mind if something happens. Well, I said to Pete, hey, why don't you share with us what it was like, and how the DC-3 worked back in the day, Well, it really surprised me what I did not know. So when they jumped into D-Day, each of the DC-3s or C-47s carried about 20 paratroopers, maybe a couple less, couple more, but right around 20.
And some equipment.
And some, So they put bundles. They had what are called door bundles. So the door bundle would get pushed out first, and the paratroopers would follow the door bundle. And of course, a lot of these. Go ahead.
And a stick is 20 guys, right?
A stick, okay. Yes. In this case, the stick would be about 20. Now, as I jumped later on smaller aircraft, it could be anywhere from 10 to 30 or 40 or so, right?
Right.
Well, it was pretty surprising. I was like, wow, when he shared actually how that worked. So in a DC-3, you have a single static line. Okay. So in modern aircraft, like a C-17 or a C-130, you have dual static lines, dual doors. Okay. DC-3, you only got one door. You got one static line. So how this worked on D-Day, and this is pretty insane, and you'll never see this done again, because I've jumped out of a DC-3 again about 10 years ago as part of I joined the World War II airborne demonstration team and went through their jump school. And we jumped DC-3s, and that's what they have, a DC-3, and later I volunteered to work on one and help restore it. But this is how it works, and it's pretty insane. So the first 10, right, they're facing towards the door, right? And they're hooked up. Right. The 10 on the other side of the door are facing to the rear of the aircraft. So the first 10 going out are facing to the front. The second 10 following them are facing to the rear and on the other side. Okay. And as those guys go out, they literally turn around, follow them, hook up, and go. And I'm like, oh my God, those 10 aren't even hooked up when the door opens. I did not know that. I was like, oh my goodness. So,
oh wow.
So the first 10 guys have been hooked up since the airplane took off.
No.
No.
Within a few minutes.
So what happens is you got the Pathfinders, right? This is how this works in World War II. The Pathfinders would jump in, and they had these radio beacons, and they would guide the aircraft as close as they could to the drop zone. And as they got closer, the green light would go on, the yellow light first. And then as a yellow light, there's a set of jump commands that are given. Stand up, hook up. There's a whole bunch of them, right? And so as they got close, like within, I would say 6 to 8 minutes of the drop point, they would be stood up. So, the first command would be, to stand up. Second command is hook up. third command is check static lines, and so on and so forth. And so when the green light came on, the jump master, who's right there at the door, would go. And then the jump master is supposed to be the last one out.
Right.
So in how this worked when I was a jump master, it works a couple of different ways. I jumped into the water one time on a tailgate. On a tailgate jump as a jump master, you jump first. And you hold what's called a reverse bite. Instead of holding it like this, you hold it like this. And the tailgate's down. You turn around and give your jump commands. Then you turn around, and when the green light comes on, you reach back and you go, follow me. And then you go out. And that's how you jump a tailgate. So it's a little different. And when you're jumping a door, as a jump master, you give all the jump commands, right? And then as each jumper comes to you, you grab their static line and push it back. So you're standing there and you're going.
Get it out of the way.
You're getting it out of the way. They go
You're
out
counting.
they're going. And then what you do is as that last guy goes, you grab the door, you look out, you check, and then you jump. And
the danger with the last 10 guys that haven't been hooked up is they might miss.
Yeah.
They go out without that.
And they're not having their static lines checked. So how modern day airborne operations work is you have a whole airborne team. So you have the jump masters, you have the safeties, you have the drop zone safety officer, and between those 3, 4, 5 people, and you'll have one person who's called the airborne commander who's in charge of the whole airborne operation. You ensure everybody goes out safely, okay? So how the safeties work is this. So you've just given the command, stand up, hook up, check static lines. As soon as that check static lines, and the next piece is check equipment, sound off for equipment check. And but as soon as that check static line is done, the safety who's just hooked up with an Air Force parachute, because he's not jumping, or she, doesn't matter. You'll have 2 of them. You'll have one on each side. So that safety then goes up and traces every static line. And as that safety gets to you, the jump master, he looks at you and he goes, and you go, okay, all right. So we have these great safety measures. Well, on D-Day, there was no safety.
No.
Those dudes just hooked up and boom, went out the door. So
if you go out without your static line that works, either it's not hooked up properly or whatever, what's the result?
You have a reserve on your front.
So your back chute doesn't open.
Chest back.
Yeah,
and you have the emergency.
You have a pull, right? And so when you jump out, your hands are on your reserve like this, and you're in what's called a tight body position with your legs together, and you jump out. Woo! Right. So you're going to count. Your first thing you're going to do is count, and the count now in the Army is 6,000. You go. So you go 1,000, 2,000, then your head 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and then you reach up. Grab your risers, and you'll look up and you'll check your canopy. Okay. So if that canopy, if that doesn't deploy, or that canopy out there is not there, you go over this right for your jump as part of pre-jump procedures. You snap back into a tight body position, you pull your reserve. And that has a spring. So it shoots out and it should, and then you do the same thing. You check it. And then hopefully everything is okay. Now,
is part of your training to go out without being hooked up.
Oh no,
and to deploy your reserve.
No,
you never train for that.
No, you train. What you train is for malfunction. You train if your parachute doesn't open. You train if your parachute has excessive twists, and it's all called pre-jump training. It's required immediately before every jump. So a jump master leads the pre-jump training. He reads it from a manual. Now, it used to be that jump masters were required to memorize it and recite it from memory. I believe most of the time now you still should have it memorized, but you can read it. And so that way you don't miss anything. And it covers landing in trees, which I landed in a tree one time. And so everything is fresh, so that when you jump out that airplane, if my chute doesn't open, okay, I'm snapping back, I'm pulling my reserve, checking my canopy, and getting ready to, do my parachute landing fall, which is feet knees together, and you just kind of like a skier. Your knees hit and you roll. And you always want You always want wind. You don't want no wind. I jumped on no wind one day and I got hurt bad, like really bad. Because what happened was there was no wind. So, and it was on this same drop zone. And in fact, it was the second jump of getting my German jump wings. And I literally compressed. So my knees just went, whoop, my whole body just went, whack.
You were 3 inches shorter that day.
Yeah.
No,
When it was over, when that happened to me, the fellow captain that was with me, I would barely walk my way back into what's called the assembly area. What you do is you turn your parachute. They have turn-in points. So I turn my parachute in and then walk to the area. And we'd actually bust out here. We didn't bring our cars out. We'd bust out to the drop zone. And I looked at him. I said, man, you need to take me to the ER right now. And I ended up, they did an ultrasound on me. And I micro tore every muscle below my belly button.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't run for about a month. I mean, it really, really hurt me. So yeah. And then the time I landed in the tree, again, same thing. You go over what to do when you land in a tree during this same pre-jump procedure. So when you jump, everything is fresh in your mind. You know, I know it and I've gone through it so many times. So when I landed 35 feet up in a tree, the only way I'm getting down is I'm lowering my reserve. And in this case, yeah, that's how you get down.
It's your Tarzan rope.
So what happens is when you have a chest strap, right? You have your riser canopy release assemblies that will release your risers. I'm not going to touch those though, because they're holding me in my parachute, right? Yeah. So when you land in a tree, the first thing you have to do is undo your chest strap because you don't want to hang yourself. And then you have 2 leg straps because the parachute harness comes up both sides of your legs and attaches on either side of your hips like this. So
and you want to be careful with those.
What you do is you release the chest strap and your parachute spring loaded. So you have to put your hand in front of it and control its exit. You just don't want it shooting out. So I did that, did my chest strap and put my hand over it like this, pulled it. I looked down at the ground and I'm like, crap, I'm about 35 feet up. This sucks. And I went and I let the parachute go out. And it went. And when it stopped, it was still about 10 feet off the ground. I go, fuck.
Oh, wow.
Like, what the fuck? And so, but I have no choice. I've committed at this point, right? So, so the next step is you undo those 2 leg straps, right? And you do one at a time. Well, what happens is as soon as, and you have a waist strap. So you undo the waist strap, and then you undo the first of the 2 leg straps because you got to undo both of them, right? So you undo that leg strap. And before you do that, you're holding your riser up like this. So you don't fall and you don't really kind of go. But when I did that, my whole body weight pivoted to the other leg strap. So all the weight's on that one. And I've got to reach over. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, come here. And then I let that go. I got that done. Now the only thing holding me is my hand on my risers, on my one set of risers. Okay. And I've got all these parachute lines. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab those parachute lines, my hands like this, and I'm going to cross my feet like this and try to grab and hold and slide down. Well, I was Joe Cool Guy Paratrooper, and I had jungle boots with tennis shoe soles on them. So, you land a little softer, and there's businesses on Fort Bragg that do this for you. So I start sliding down, and I'm like, my hands are starting to, because I can't get a grip. And I'm like, oh crap. So my hands are burning, and I'm like, I don't want to burn my hands. I want to still play guitar. I don't want to burn my hands up. And so I let go and dropped about 10 feet. I broke my foot. And yeah, so I was one of the few that ended up landing in a tree and lived to tell about it. My fellow captain at the time, he landed in a tree. He was able to shimmy down. I was too high up. There was no freaking way I was shimmying down, nothing. And then later they had to come back and use a long ladder and other stuff to
Retrieve the gear.
Retrieve the parachute. Yeah.
Did you ever have a cigarette roller in Mae West?
No, I never had a cigarette roller in Mae West. One of our test officers, when we were testing the parachute that the Army uses now, the T-11, I think it's called. We did the operational testing for that, the developmental testing for it while I was at the test board back 25 years ago. And he got a Mae West when they were testing it out in Yuma. So that's the only Mae West I was ever heard of. And what that did, interestingly, is when that happens during testing, it resets the test point. You go back to 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So people don't know, a Mae West is when the line goes over the parachute and it looks like 2 breaths.
Right.
And a cigarette roll is just like a roll and it doesn't deploy.
Yeah, I was lucky in that, the only, I landed in that tree. I hit hard some other times on the drop zone, got a bruise on my ass one time that was, big as a watermelon. But I didn't, other than breaking my foot, that one hairline, it was basically a hairline fracture. I never got super injured on a jump. I do have, and I'm hoping to get 100. I got a VA appeal in right now, and I'm hoping to get 100% disability. I get 60 now. Wow. But I'm hoping for 100 because that same jump, when I retired from the Army, the VA sent me a letter and said, well, you can apply for more disability than you have. And when I looked at it, it said I had disc degeneration in L5. And, I've always had a little bit of back pain. I thought just that's because I was fat.
Just rub some dirt on it.
Well, I had a friend who had to have rods in his back because his back was so bad from jumping.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't have knee problems, and my back problem is what it is. I'm trying to. It does hurt me every day, but it's not where I have to. It just is what it is. So,
hey, Mark,
go ahead.
I wanted to go back to when you were supervising the testing. Now, you mentioned special forces in there, so I'm going to say with some of the tests and the results, top secret information?
No.
Okay.
No, everything's secret, classified secret most of the time. Not really anything top secret. And, it's a need to know kind of thing. And they keep it pretty hush hush, but
I guess all the top secret stuff is after they land.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you an interesting story about my time at the test board. So I was at the test board in 2000. I was there when 9/11 happened. So I was there in 2000 and 2001, essentially. I was there for a year because I still needed to get another command slot so I could get promoted to major. Going there was coming full circle for me because as a young paratrooper in the 82nd in 1986, I was a radar operator called the FAR, Forward Area Alerting Radar, big honking thing, 6-wheel vehicle called a Gamma Goat. The Army doesn't use. They turned in all the FAR radars back in 1990. They discontinued them. But we tow a big 5-kilowatt generator and big monstrosity, right?
Could you make popcorn using it?
Yeah, you could actually on the generator. It'd heat up and stuff. But we got a new radar in, and it was called the TDAR, Tactical Defense Alert Radar. And it had 3 pieces and cables. That was it. So you had this screen that spun. You had a tripod that the screen sat on, or quadrupod. I think it was a quad. And you had the transceiver and the receiver in one box, and then the cables that connected it all up. I got assigned to be the person on the first TDAR that was brought into the military for testing. And this is 1986. So I ended up doing a whole display on it. It was kind of cool because my parents came out. It was just right before I got out. They were able to see the display, see the cool radar. But the cool part of it is I got to go down to the test board and participate in the first test jumps of this radar because it'd never been dropped.
So it would be one of the equipment pieces that would drop with you.
Right.
And then you would set it up.
yeah. And in
It's
this
a
case,
forward
right.
forward radar.
And the way we tested it, and when I got to the test board, there was a couple of guys there that remembered me and remembered the TDAR testing, and so that was why it was cool. It's kind of come full circle. But how we jumped that, so it had 3 containers. You had a little square container for the receiver, those green plastic, with the clamps on them. And then you had 2 long containers, the same kind of plastic kind of stuff and foam inside for the screen and the legs, the quadrupod, whatever you want to call it. So what we did is we put it on a pallet, and the Army doesn't do this anymore. And we tested it two ways. We put it on a Jeep trailer and dropped it with a Jeep and a trailer. And of course, the trailer was on a separate pallet. And then we dropped it on, well, maybe it was on the same pallet. I can't remember. But the one I really remember is they put it on its own pallet, and it was a C-130. And what they did is they had what was called a wedge. And so they put the radar on, they package it and put, a honeycomb that's what cushions the cardboard honeycomb cushions the drop. And so they put it on this wedge. And then that's set right at the rear of the aircraft. And so when the green light came on, and the tailgate's already lowered down, and it's on this wedge, and a loadmaster's got a release, an Air Force guy's got a release on it. So he pulls this release, and it's got wheels or rollers, and this whole pallet just rolls off. So it was really neat about this jump, and I'm just this young kid, but I'm part of this, and I'm going to be a part of the crew on the ground that puts it all together, right? So we're standing there hooked up like this, and the wedge goes, and we all kind of lean like this, and we can see the 2 parachutes that are hooked up to it go poof. And then all of a sudden we get the command, the green light's on, go. And we go out right after it. And we had it set up and operational on the drop zone in about 5 minutes.
Wow. Did you go out the ramp, or did you go out the door?
We went out the door. It's because the ramp's already taken up with the wedge. The Army does not do the wedge anymore. They haven't done the wedge for decades. So the primary, and I wrote an article on this that was published in Logistician magazine. The primary airdrop mechanism now for the Army is what's called the dual row airdrop system. And what it is it's pallets that are side by side on a C-17. And so they lower the tailgate, the C-17 angles up, and then they have extraction parachutes that pull everything out. Okay. And now another cool part of my airborne story was I was at Fort Bragg. I don't know if they've done it since, for the largest equipment drop in history up to that time. We had 32 pieces of equipment in the air at the same time.
I think I've seen that video.
Yeah. We had one load, one line of the dual row failed to deploy. Every other one. And so we're down on the drop zone, and it was cool, man. Just all these parachutes coming down, and yeah, it was a really neat event. And I still do. I just loved being a paratrooper. It was really a part of my career, and I gamed the Army on it. I ended up spending 26 years on airborne status. That's unheard of. Yeah. But I gamed it. In fact, at one point I was a captain. So here's the cool story. When I left the test board, right? And let me set this up for a second. If you're not airborne, you're called a leg. And of course, legs, they're not as good as airborne dudes. You're a leg, stay away. I'm a paratrooper, So anyway, that I'm setting this up. So I went to a leg unit. They're not on airborne status, right? Well, they had a few slots that were. So when I interviewed for the job, it was contingent that I remained on airborne status. So I got one of the very few slots in that unit. And now, interestingly, that unit has been renamed I'm not sure what they're called now. And I think they're called the Theater Support Command or whatever. At the time it was called the Corps Support Command. But just this week, it was released by the Army that they are eliminating 22,000 paid parachutist positions. So that the folks that are jumping are really the ones that are most likely going to deploy. But the cool thing, like I mentioned earlier, is it's a good time to be a jump master because you get paid double.
That must mean that the beaming technology is coming on the scene where they can just beam the people to the.
No, here's the funny thing. The 82nd Airborne Division exists to do what's called the Strategic Brigade Airdrop. That is the sole purpose of the 82nd Airborne.
Yeah.
Okay. What that means, the 82nd Airborne has 3 brigades, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Brigade. I was part of 1st Brigade, and then when I was a Joe, I think I was part of 3rd Brigade when I was a regular Joe paratrooper. But the Strategic Brigade Airdrop, what happens is you're on a 24-hour recall. They call it Division Ready Force 1 or DRF1. And you would do train-ups, you do exercises. You're on 18-hour notice. The whole goal is that within 18 hours of notification, that entire brigade is wheels up, inbound, and its primary mission is what's called an airfield seizure. So they're gonna drop all their equipment first, then they're gonna drop their paratroopers, and then they're gonna seize and maintain, secure a foothold on that airfield, so that once they get it, now follow-on forces can air land and then move out and to take whatever
Deliver supplies and troops that way.
Yeah, and so they did a few jumps in Iraq that were close to that. The Rangers jumped in. There's been a few jumps that were kind of close to that, but they've been smaller. The Ranger Battalion can do like a mini version of that. And so I think the Army doing what they're doing now is basically saying, hey, let's tighten it up. Who's really, because we all knew, like when I got that airborne slot, I was like, I'm getting over. I know I'm getting over, but I didn't want to lose $150 either at the time, whatever it was. Right. I think it was 150 still, but yeah, I didn't, it's like, I like jumping. It's part of who I am. It's part of, my whole thing is because I'm one of the unfortunate ones. I went to Ranger school and spent 63 days down there and didn't get my tab. I didn't graduate. Ended up getting recycled twice. They were going to recycle me a 3rd time in the mountains. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to. The first time I got recycled, I had to do the mountain phase again. I literally looked at the dude and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this again. Now, the funny thing of it is that it was psychological. So my second mountain phase is in Ranger school. I was like, well, let's go, But when I I was going to get recycled again. I knew I was an infantry officer, so I knew I needed my badge if I was going to stay as an infantry guy. So I told my squad, I said, look, I need to come back. If you quit, you can't come back. So I wasn't going to quit. So but part of your evaluation and the way you could get recycled is your peers could rate you low. So I just told my squad, and I'd already had that happen to me. And so I said, just peer me low again. I'll take an administrative drop from the course, and then I can come back. And I ended up working to come back, but then the writing was kind of on the wall for me. I kind of looked at what was going on. At the time, I was still hyper Mormon dude. I'm like, oh, I'll become a chaplain. I had a friend that he became a chaplain. So we were roommates in college, and he retired as a chaplain. And a good guy, a guy named Christopher Dine, really, really good cat. I thought at the time, I was like, well, I want to become a chaplain too, Chris, that's a pretty cool job. And I'm Mr. Joe Righteous. But it wasn't me really, So in your Army career, you have a couple of times that you can transition and switch. And one of those times is as a captain. So I did that. And I did what you call officers get assigned branches. So I'm branched infantry. And what I do is I apply for what's called a branch transfer to quartermaster, which governs airdrop, supply. It's a supply officer. It's now they call it. It's all wrapped into one in the Army now, and it's called a logistics officer. Is what it is. And so, but at the time, you could go quartermaster, transportation, ordnance. Those were the three, and then medical. Those were the three kind of branches that you could go. Now they have a single branch identifier, and you still do specialize. But yeah, I did that, and the assignments guy, and this is where I kind of learned to manipulate my career. So it gets approved, and I call the assignments guy up, and he says, "Well," he says, "Do you want to go to Korea?" And now Korea is for most people, 90%, it's a solo career, and I'm married with not a baby on the way yet, but soon. And I told him, "I'll tell you what, if you can guarantee me what's called a sequential assignment right back to Fort Bragg, I will go." He says, "Okay." And then he says, how about you want to go to rigger school?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I'll go to rigger school." And they have a rigger school, especially for officers. It's called the Aerial Material Delivery Officers Course. The difference is you're still required to learn how to pack your own chute, and then you jump the chute you packed. But you don't spend as much time packing as the enlisted guys do that get trained on it. The course then transitions into the planning phase where you plan airborne operations and you get graded on it. And so one of my little claims to fame in the Army was I was the Distinguished Honor Graduate of ADMOC. And so that kind of, I was on a high when I went into what's called the Captain's Careers course. And then the interesting thing was when I went to the Captain's Career course and we all got assigned afterwards, there were about 20, just under 30, maybe 25 or so of us that were logistics officers. 17 of us got assigned to Korea.
Wow.
And the other 16 were like, and I'm like, I'm good. And that literally was my only time away from Fort Bragg, along with 6 months in Afghanistan and the schools that I had. So, and I got that from my attitude. That same guy, Lauren Ramos, told me, he goes, "Look," and another a guy, Mark King, he was a captain RTC instructor, told me, "Look, you're your own best career manager. Don't let these assignments guys, you're the best manager. You're gonna," and that's what I did my whole career. I got lucky, and I was very fortunate in that by the time I retired, I had about 7 years before I retired, I started my transition business, which is called Lava Cable and making guitar cables. And I had made enough of those, and the business was going strong enough that when I did the math, if I were to stay and retire as a lieutenant colonel, I was like, well, it's going to be maybe $200 to $300 more a month. This business is just killing it right now. I just want to get out. I want to get out and focus on my business. And I started gaining weight. My body was, just one of those folks that, I'm not blessed with the thin, genome.
High metabolism.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, Mark, that you pick the brains of the people above you a lot in order to have the ammunition inside there to plan your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what I learned a lot of just fantastic things. I served with some great leaders. My brigade commander, when I was a rifle platoon leader, is General Petraeus, the former CIA.
Oh, wow.
He took over my platoon for PT one day. And great. Great guy. I've got on my LinkedIn page, he's been kind enough to put a little blurb for me. Because I wasn't like, I was just one of his platoon leaders. So I'm down the chain, but he was just a good dude. He just really drilled down, to his whole. In fact, it was funny because we had his farewell because he left the brigade while I was assigned to the brigade. So, when a senior officer like that leaves, or when there's a set number of people leaving, the Army has their units will have what's called hail and farewells. And what you do is you schedule a restaurant out in the public, and it's got a whole little routine for it. You'll welcome in all the new guys, and you'll send the guys off. In his case, we had a farewell just for him. And
so how many people go to the farewell?
Mostly the officers, and some of the senior NCOs will go.
But is that 50 or 150 or?
I think at his farewell, there were maybe close to 100.
Okay.
Yeah. 75 to 100 people there. And yeah, so they did at the time. So this was 96 or 97, I think, when this happened. You know, they did the David Letterman top 10 for him as a joke, you know, as he's going out. they got, and it was that this is the top 10 reasons we're going to miss Colonel Petraeus. And the number one reason on there, and we all laughed, was he was the best damn squad leader in the brigade. Because he's got so much attention to detail. I would argue that he is singularly the brightest military mind of our generation. He is.
Really?
He was the fourth director of the CIA.
Yeah, he is just, and he's just a nice guy. I mean, that's what's so amazing. And what I did during my career is when I knew he was at Fort Leavenworth when I got signed there for a short school. I knew he was there. So I purposely went in and said hey to him. And we, you know, had a short little chat. I didn't want him to forget me, you know. Later, at Fort Bragg, I would see him at the gym. And yeah, he got shot through the chest with a 5.56 round on a range, almost died.
Wow.
He later had a skydiving accident where he broke his back. But he was smoking fit. I mean, when he took over my platoon for PT, we did what's called a 4-mile release run. So we ran 2 miles as a platoon. And then at the 2-mile mark, we released everybody to run back at their own pace. Oh, he smoked all of us. Because he was a runner. He was a runner at West Point. And oh yeah, I'll never forget that. Yeah, he's just brilliant. So, but to tie this kind of in is what I learned from him is a lot of attention to detail is very, very important, and having good relationships with everybody, building, from my mission, I'd already learned, the whole commitment pattern, which is, obviously just a sales thing that the church has robbed. But it does work. Build relationships of trust. And at the end of the day, when you're genuine, and then tying in, Gene, to what you said earlier, what I saw great leaders do in the Army is they surrounded themselves with experts. Yeah. And a great leader would not be egotistical.
I have yes men around them. Just
no,
smart people.
Right.
That's right. Just smart people. Good leaders can give a fuck about their ego. They can give a fuck about anything other than successfully accomplishing the mission and having great relationships with their leaders and their soldiers. And that is key. It's not about, how is this good? Is this going to make me look or whatever? And I saw that time and time again.
It's like, get the job done and do it right.
Get the job done, do it right. And that's a lesson I learned from my mother. My mother, love her to death. She was pretty high strung, and I did some crazy things rebelling, but she always taught me, Mark, do the job right the first time. I still remember her showing me how to vacuum, showing me how to clean, showing me how to wash dishes. And, she was all over it, and she'd get on you.
How to clean a latrine with a toothbrush, right?
Yeah, which I did.
Yeah. Permanent latrine orderly.
Yeah. Well, you want to know a funny latrine story? So I've got lots of stories. I was just sharing this with a friend of mine. So I'm a young paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I'm friends with this guy on Facebook now. In each Army unit, you have what's called a first sergeant. He's an E8 with a diamond, and he is the unit non-commissioned officer, and he works with the company commander. They co-lead that unit, right? Well, at this time, this guy retired as a sergeant major, which is the next rank up. But his name is Frank Macon, great guy, just awesome dude. And his office is right across from the latrine. And so the latrine's, kind of like this. and his office is right across from it. And I'm a non-smoker. I'm still this Mormon goody two-shoe kid, right? And I remember going into the latrine, and there were cigarette butts in the urinals, and at least in one of them. And oh my God, we've all smelled that before. And I was cranky that morning, and I went and I just walked straight across, and I bitched to this first sergeant about it. And he goes, "Stoddard, yes, for sergeant, go guard the fucking latrine and shut up." Yeah, needless to say, I never complained about cigarette butts in the latrine.
You saw the problem. Now you're in charge of it.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. Well, and the thing about it was too, and this ties into my Mormon story. So when I'm in this unit, I've yet to go on my mission. I went on my mission after my life followed my dad a lot. My dad was drafted. In my case, I enlisted, and then he went on his mission after he got home, and so I did the same thing. And so I'm still Mormon goody two shoe. I'm trying to live right and all that kind of stuff. And so in the Army, when you live in the barracks, you have to maintain safety. So in order to do that, you will have what's called charge of quarters, CQ, NCO. And that CQ NCO will have a lower enlisted person with them every day. And they stay all night. They're supposed to stay awake all night in case there's a fire, whatever goes on, And again, it's called CQ. And then you have a CQ desk. So I had to walk past the CQ desk to get to my room every time. And those guys would fuck with me hard. They knew I was a Mormon, so they would fucking be showing me porn. I mean, just fucking with me. Hey, Stoddard, look at that. And I would go, "You fuckers," and I would say that, but I would use my Mormon clean language, and I would go back to my room and
you dust your feet.
Yeah, well, I will tell you an interesting story. Again, this is kind of my Mormon story. It's part of it. So when I got out, when I went home and got out of the Army the first time, there was a young man came up to me, and he told me this. He goes, "Stoddard," and he goes, "We fucked with you hard." And he says, "But you know what? I respect you. You never relinquished your standards. You held tight." And I still to this day remember that, I think at the end of the day, now that I know what the church is, it is what it is. I kind of wish at this point that, if I wanted to have a beer, I could have had a beer if I wanted to, or, whatever. But, right. A lot of the guys in the barracks, I mean, oh my God, we had one dude, and I later, I was a guitar player there. We had bands in the barracks and stuff. It was a lot of fun. And this one funny thing happened to me. So the little bands I was in, we played classic rock, mostly, and blues, mostly classic rock covers. And at one point, kind of towards when I was getting closer to getting out, one of the cooks who lived in the barracks was from Southern California, just like me. And he had a punk rock band that he was putting together. So he wanted me and the drummer in my punk group or my rock group to back him up. And we were going to get a gig out in, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And what's so funny about that is, this is great. This is a challenge. We'll learn some Sex Pistols and, some punk. And Danny, the drummer, he still is. He drums to this day. Great guy, great drummer.
But don't you have to smash your guitar at the end?
Well, yeah, a little bit of that. But what's funny about that whole experience is that I remember getting a white shirt and magic markering it and tearing holes in it and putting safety pins in it and trying to look like this punker. Well, we never were able to secure a gig, which is what it is. We had fun learning the songs and jamming with this guy, and I can't even remember his name now, but he was Bill, I think. But this same guy later, he got so fucked up in the barracks that he ripped one of the sinks right off the fucking wall. I mean, so there was crazy guys like that just, Yeah, that's the one thing in the Army. You never know, who you're going to get. But, one of the things about the military that people don't, I think, fully understand, and I'm going to caveat this. I grew up in Southern California. I don't know what racism is. I don't.
Me too. I grew up in
My
LA. Yeah.
my parents didn't teach me. I had Vietnamese neighbors. I was the only white kid in the Mexican club at high school because the kid that I was friends with, I told him, "Can I be in the club too?" And he said, "Sure."
Wow.
So I literally don't know what it is. And I will say that I can't speak for the Army now, but for when I was in, and for many, many veterans, it remains that way. Vets don't, for the most part, don't see color.
Right.
We just don't.
Just rank.
You're in. Yeah, that's right. Just rank. You're in that same foxhole with that guy.
That's right.
It don't matter. And there are thousands of stories of it don't matter what your race is, you're stepping up to the plate and you're doing what's necessary to take care of your buds.
Everybody has a job to do.
That's right. That's right. And so I will tell you that from my experience, now it's not, and I think it's pretty common. I think my experience is probably shared by about 85 to 90%, around there of veterans, is that social experiment, if you want to call it that, when they unsegregated the Army after World War II, it's worked for the most part. Now, I did have an NCO that was of another race that when I was a rifle platoon leader that just simply didn't like me. And I think it was white racism, frankly, when I look back. And at the end of the day, there was nothing I can do about it.
What was desegregated first, baseball or the armed forces? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, that's an important part, of Americana, right? That there were problems and solutions were offered and implemented, and we still have problems, right? But we're still trying to work on them. And so thanks, Mark, for telling us all about your paratrooping experience. And if you remember something and we bring you back, you can throw a little paratrooper story in every now and then.
Lots of stories. Go ahead, Tim.
When I was at Lockheed, I worked with the combat Talon guys for a while, and we were dropping these pallets, containers with people in them out of the back of the C-130. Do you know anything about those?
Dropping containers of what in them?
People in it. Little 2 or 3 man container. A shelter would pull out and a parachute and would drop down to the ground.
I have never heard of that.
There's videos on YouTube about it.
Yeah, must have been an Area 51 type of a.
Yeah, I don't think. I know the Russians and others have done that. I don't know. To my knowledge, I've never heard of anything like that. I think for something like that to actually occur and people be on the inside. Yeah,
not many people would volunteer for that.
No, you're not going to survive.
There's videos on YouTube of these guys. I'll have to find it and send it to you.
Yeah, find it and send it to me. I've never heard of that. Now there are the SF folks have jumped some crazy equipment. Big long cylinders that you push out, and then that cylinder lowers, and then you're flying above it in a skydive position. And then when it hits and then you land, and of course, like all the combat equipment jumps I made in the Army, initially you had a dual release, and then towards the end of my career, we got a single release, and then that rucksack full of your gear would lower. And it's the funny thing about the Army too, or paratroopers, is when you see the pictures of all of us walking up to the aircraft, we're waddling. I mean, there's a crap load of gear on us. And in fact, my first jump back into the 82nd Airborne Division as a rifle platoon leader. As a rifle platoon leader, the radio operator works directly for you. You call him the RTO. And so when you land, he's your guy. He's your little buddy. He follows you everywhere you go so that you can talk to the company commander. And the company commander has his RTO that's talking to him, and he's talking to the battalion commander. So we're in that unit area. We're all getting set up. Got all our equipment out. And my RTO walks over and goes, "Hey, sir, here's the radio." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. You're the RTO. Why aren't you jumping the radio?" And he looked at me dead in the face, and he goes, "Because the company commander wants you to talk to him within the first 2 minutes on the drop zone."
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I shoved that thing in there. My ruck it had to have weighed at least at that point 60, 65 pounds. And yeah, and when you walk like that, you're just like, you know, at the end of the day, you just can't wait to get out of the aircraft. You're like, get me the heck out. And yeah,
when Tim was talking about a small container with people in it, I immediately thought, because you said that was a bad idea, basically, right?
Yeah.
What about the Jaredites and the barges with all the people in and the tossing and turning and bees? Bees might be in it, and where's their latrine, right? They're swimming in their latrine the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's not a good idea.
There's also the full recovery device where the C-130 has forks and it's got a balloon and there's two guys on a rope. The plane comes and picks it up, swings it back, and they catch it reeling in.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff that happens, but the Jaredites, it's a whole other, the barges. That's
another.
Yeah, Joseph Smith, I mean, the one thing that dude had was a wild ass imagination.
He was creative.
He was creative, all right. And I mean, at the end of the day, he was clearly pulling from multiple sources around him.
That's right.
To get these ideas and spew them out of his mouth, and oh my God,
That's right. The whole thing is fascinating. There are. I'm going to be interviewing the two historians that came out with books recently. Ganesh Cherian and John G. Turner are going to come on the show and talk about their Joseph Smith basically experience, because in a way Ganesh is trying to get in the mind of Joseph Smith. John G. Turner is trying to figure out all the things that are swirling around Joseph Smith at the same time. And Tim and I might be on that podcast, and we'll have some good questions.
That's great. I think the more we as ex-Mormons understand about how that actually came about, I mean, in my post-Mormon life, that's been key for me. I want to be able to, in a snapshot, try to understand, it's complex, but how did he actually do that?
Right.
And
he was a very eclectic man, and he stole from everybody.
Yes,
and lots of charisma, right?
Lots of charisma.
Well, the part that I kind of wonder about is, and I still subscribe to the theory that he likely, from his time as a Methodist exhorter, my theory, this is just mine, and I think there's others that adhere to it. I think when he looked in the hat, he put notes, little notes for him to guide his dictation, like he's preaching.
Yeah.
And so
I think William Davis has that idea as well.
Yeah, I think what the Book of Mormon is a stitched together series of sermons.
Yep.
And he just started bullshitting. I mean, just literally riffing, and as shit came into his brain, he just spit it out. And, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And the curious part to me would be, well, how did he prepare each day? He likely thought about, okay, today, what am I going to dictate? And I also think too, and my theory about all this is that when he started writing the Book of Mormon, because later, as we well know, these other revelations like the Doctrine and Covenants, the Book of Mormon, not Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price, and all that other stuff kind of eclipsed, and it was his kind of continuation of this genesis of preaching, if you will. And
his theology was evolving.
Yes, his theology was evolving, and so it's. I think it'd be interesting to kind of understand more of can we nail down more of the sources and, how he prepared each day and those types of things. And, clearly his preparation was pretty haphazard, because when the 13 or 16 pages were lost, there was no fucking way he was reciting that again,
That's
Oh.
right.
so
I was just thinking we could do a funny story. Joseph Smith as a jump master, and you could make up your own
well,
story.
he jumped a lot of 14-year-old girls, didn't he?
There you go, jump master.
Yeah, there's your jump master for you.
So
Yeah.
we'll say thanks everybody for watching. We'll have Mark on a
Thank
few
you.
other
Thanks,
times
Tim.
for some things.
Thank you very much.
And everybody have a great like, share, and subscribe, and have a great rest of 2025. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.
See ya. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
And so
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.